Consider this your personal one-on-one. Office hours are open and it is time for your session. So get comfortable and let's talk. So we have Stepan, lovely name by the way, and he wants to know all about fungus gnats, why he's dealing with them, how to get rid of them, and we're going to talk about it. I wrote down some notes for you, so let's get into it. Why are you dealing with them right now? Well, the number one issue is a moisture problem. Usually when we are keeping the soil from our plants wet for too long, that is a fungus gnat's dream. It is their breeding ground. It's where they love to lay eggs, which by the way, fun fact, a female fungus gnat can lay up to 300 eggs, which is why when they grow into adults, they're annoying us. And what is the universal sign that plant parents have fungus gnats? Yeah, we all do that. And I don't want you to feel as though you are alone, because we are all being personally attacked by fungus gnats throughout our plant parenthood journey. And really, again, it's just an indication that the moisture levels in your soil are staying wet for too long. So let's talk about how fungus gnats actually affect your plants, because again, there's different cycles to a fungus gnat. The adults that we are seeing flying around, that's just one issue, but we really need to talk about the root cause, which is the larva in the soil. And when they start hatching into those adults, well, again, that's a different story, but let's talk about the larva and what they actually do to your plants. So the larvae like to feed on the root hairs of our plants, and the root hairs on the roots of our plants are a very key and important part of the plant's anatomy. It's actually how it takes in a lot of the nutrients and the water that the plant needs to grow. And if the fungus gnat larva is feeding on that, well, you know, that is not going to make our plants happy. So again, getting back to the root cause. The root cause is there is a lot of moisture in the soil, and it is causing the baby fungus gnats, the larvae, to be really happy. I mean, they're just feasting in there. And then those baby fungus gnats turn into the adults that are flying around. So again, we have two separate issues, really. We have the larva that we need to take care of and the adults that we need to get rid of as well. So how do we do that? Let's talk about solutions here. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to let the soil dry out more than what you probably are doing in between watering, okay? Plants really don't need as much water as I think that we sometimes assume. Again, for those fungus gnats, it is just a beautiful playground for them to just live their best life, and we don't want that, right? So letting the soil dry out in between waterings, I would say 80 to 90%, depending on the plant, 80 to 90% letting it dry out before you water it again, right? That's gonna be a really good way to just kind of break up the cycle of what's going on. The next thing you can do is bottom water. Now, I typically do not bottom water my plants, but it is a great way to combat fungus gnats that like to lay the eggs at the top layer of the soil. When you're bottom watering, well, the soil at the bottom is really soaking in all of that moisture, and the top part is pretty much staying dry. And what is the thing that fungus gnats hate the most? Is a dry environment. Again, break up that cycle. I wouldn't say it's a 100% way to not have them, but if you're used to top watering, maybe try bottom watering, but you do want to be careful with that because the roots sit at the bottom, right? And if the roots are sitting at the bottom and you're bottom watering and maybe not even understanding that, you still need to let the soil dry out a little bit, even at the bottom. That's actually the most important part because that's where the roots are. You do have to find the balance with bottom watering. It is, you know, a bit of a skill set, especially when you're used to pouring water on top and seeing everything. Bottom watering, though, can break up the cycle of larva to adult fungus gnats. Products that I love to use when it comes to fungus gnats are, number one, mosquito bits. They are designed to really kill the larva of mosquitoes, but they work fabulous for the larva of fungus gnats as well. And what you want to do is they come in a donut dunk size, they call it, or bits, which are these tiny little pellets. And with either of those, you can go ahead and make a mosquito bit tea. And what that is letting the product soak in water for 30 minutes and then getting rid of the dunk or the bits and just using the water that is left over or the tea and watering your plants. It's going to kill the larvae in the soil and again, stop the cycle of them turning into the adults that are annoying us all the time. So using that, I would say every other watering until you just start seeing the adult population start to decrease is going to be very beneficial. Now for the adults, the annoyance that they cause us, I like to use things like sticky traps or these plug-in fly traps to attract them. They are attracted to light and essentially they will fly onto this and stick on here and die. And really when you're seeing this, it's just letting you know that you do have a fungus gnat issue, but now that I've given you some tools and resources to help you combat the larvae, to stop them from becoming adults so you're not dealing with this or flying around and annoying you, now you know. But this is also another great solution, not to prevent them. This is to combat the adults. Again, we always have to think about the root cause when it comes to why we are dealing with any kind of pest, and especially when it comes to these fungus gnats. Now, the number one thing I want you to take away from this is that it is not your fault, so to speak. It really is about your watering habits and the soil and understanding how much water your soil is retaining and how to balance that out with how often you are watering. And sometimes it's not even about how often we're watering. Maybe it's about the bigger picture, which is the environment that you're growing your plants in. If you have an environment that is constantly humid and then you're adding water into the soil and it's not able to really dry up, well, you may want to increase the airflow in that room that you're growing your plants in. I absolutely love to keep my fans on 24/7. Would not suggest that if you don't want a high electricity bill, but for me, I don't like stagnant air, and having that air being moved around, pushed around is allowing airflow to not only dry up the soil, but it's giving oxygen to the roots. It's helping the air just flow. And if you think about what it feels like when you're in a room that doesn't have a fan, it's kind of like hot and sticky or humid, almost like a sauna, but maybe not that extreme. But if you think about those kind of rooms, that's kind of what it feels like. And again, all of that moisture being built up into the air and then into the soil, fungus gnats love it. So the more airflow you can include in the environments that you're growing your plants in, the less that you are watering more frequently, and maybe even adding some amendments into your soil, right? Perlite, orchid bark, these things are going to create chunk, allowing air to flow through it so that it can also dry up a little bit faster and not cause it to stay wet for too long where fungus gnats will want to go there and start a home. So Stepan, I hope you found this helpful, and anyone else that may be dealing with fungus gnats, because I know he is not the only one. Again, it is a normal part of plant parenting, and understanding what is causing it and then how to treat it is going to be your best bet in becoming a better plant parent and just not being annoyed with those pesky fungus gnats anymore, right? Now, Stepan, if that answered your question, I want to see you in the comments. And of course, anyone else that's watching, if you're in the situation and you found this helpful, let me know. But before you go, I want you to know this is the very first session of something new I've been building for you. It's called Office Hours, and every Sunday I'm opening my doors to you to answer real plant parent questions personally from you. And I want you to stay tuned because I will be talking about how you can get your questions answered next, but I'll have to see you next Sunday.